It's a privilege to be with you this evening, and I feel humbled by your goodness and the hospitality that you offer in your ministry here in the Gubbio project. I suspect that you're here not to hear me so much as to imagine the world to look differently than it currently looks. I think that's what brings you out on Thursday night. All of us have a vision, some kind of way of imagining the world we'd like to have. The prophet Habakkuk writes, "The vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, wait for it." But none of us really want to wait for los brazos cruzados, tapping our feet, staring at our watches. We want to make things happen, and that's what you've done in this church and in the Gubbio project. Make something happen. Mother Teresa diagnosed the world's ills correctly, I think, when she suggested that the problem in the world is that we've just forgotten that we belong to each other. So how do we stand against forgetting that? How do we imagine a circle of compassion and then imagine, as Laura mentions, nobody standing outside that circle? And so we do something very specific to achieve that goal in creating a community of kinship such that God might recognize it. We stand out at the very margins with the poor, the powerless, and the voiceless. We stand with those whose dignity has been denied. We stand with those whose burdens are more than they can bear. On fortunate days, you get to stand with the easily despised and the readily left out, and with the demonized, so that the demonizing will stop, and with the disposable, so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. All of us are called to do this, to create such a community of kinship, where there is no us and them. There's just us. I suspect that if our goal was to create a community of kinship, we would no longer be promoting justice. We would be celebrating. So it's been the privilege of my life in the last 25 years to work with gang members. They've taught me everything of value in the last quarter of a century. One of the things they've taught me is how to text, and I'm eternally grateful to them. It sure beats the heck out of actually talking to people. And I didn't quite have texters at it, LOL, OMG, BTW, you know. There's a new one that the homies have taught me, OHN, which apparently stands for, oh hell no. So I've been using that one quite a bit lately. So I'm with two homies, Manuel and Poncho, and we're driving to Palm Desert to speak at a high school. And they're going to help me give this talk to all these students. And so we meet at 9, and the older guys can do a variety of things, and we're driving to Palm Desert. It's a couple hours. And Manuel's in the front seat, and all of a sudden, incoming, a text. And he reads it, and he chuckles, and I said, "What is it?" And he goes, "Oh, it's stupid. It's Snoopy back at the office. We just left Snoopy at 9 o'clock as we gathered to leave. Snoopy and Manuel work in the clock-in room, where they clock in hundreds and hundreds of gang members who work at Homeboy Industries." I said, "Well, what's it say?" "Oh, it's dumb. Hang on a second. Hey, dog, it's me, Snoops. Yeah, they got my ass locked up in county jail. They're charging me with being the ugliest vato in America. You have to come down right now, show them they got the wrong shoot bullets at each other. And now they shoot text messages. And there's a word for that, and the word is kinship. Here's the truth. No kinship, no peace. No kinship, no justice. I don't think it matters how singularly focused you might be on those goals. If there is no kinship, those things won't happen. Jesus expresses it in a very clear way. It's the deepest desire of God that you may be one. So we're always seeking to bridge the distance that exists between us. I see St. Ignatius here, not the saint, but high school and college preparatory, excuse me. And I know you guys do service, and you've been to the Lord's mission into Homo Industries and immersion, and obviously that's a good thing. But service is the hallway. You want to make sure you get to the ballroom. The ballroom is kinship. You don't want to stop at service because there's even distance there. Service provider, service recipient. We want to get beyond that, actually. One of the great privileges of my life was knowing Cesar Chavez. And I remember a reporter had said to him, commented to him, "Wow, these farm workers, they sure love me." And Cesar just shrugged and he smiled and he said, "It's mutual." And that's sort of the idea that God somehow wants us to get to this mutuality and kinship where there is no distance that divides us or separates us. Separation is an illusion. I remember there was a homie named Caesar, everybody called him Dreamer. And Dreamer was a gang member from this gang in Gardens of Housing Projects where I was pastor. Nobody's gotten more jobs through Homo Industries than this guy Caesar. Either in the private sector or in my organization. But he, always sort of gravitated back to vague criminality, mainly getting high. That was his thing. But this one time he finished like an 8-month stretch in prison for a violation of some kind, and he came to see me, and he says what homies often say, "This time it'll be different." I go, all right. So I pick up the phone, like I'm in, so I call a friend of mine who runs a vending machine company in Alhambra, and he hires Caesar right on the spot. 2 weeks later, Caesar's in my office, and he's just brimming with pride, and he says, "Damn, Gene, this job makes me feel proud." And he's waving his paycheck out, the first paycheck he's got, and he says, "My jefita, she's proud of me, and my morritos, they're not ashamed of me, and you know who I have to thank for this job." And I said, "Gosh, who?" And he looked at me strangely, and he said, "Well, God, of course." I said, "Oh, gosh, that's right, yeah, God." He said, "You thought I was going to say you, didn't you?" I said, "No, God's number one." And he said, "You are so lucky we're not living in them Genesis days." And I said, "I'm sorry, them Genesis days?" He goes, "Yeah, because God would have been had struck down your ass already." Suddenly kinship so quickly. It's not about service provider, service recipient. It's about we're in this together. There's an idea that's taken root in the world. It's at the root of all that's wrong with it, and the idea would be this, that there just might be lives out there that matter less than other lives. And isn't it the common task of anybody in this church at the moment but to stand against that idea? I was ordained in '84, and I was named pastor of shortly thereafter, of Dolores Mission Parish, the poorest parish in the city of Los Angeles. Nestled in the middle of 2 public housing projects, Pico Gardens and Aliso Village, and together they comprise the largest grouping of public housing west of the Mississippi. We had 8 gangs at war there during the time that I was pastor. making it, according to the LAPD, the place of the highest concentration of gang activity in the whole city, right there in the parish. I buried my first young person killed because of this sadness in 1988, and I buried my 174th 3 Fridays ago. So we did a lot of things. First thing we did was we started a school up on the 3rd floor of what used to be our convent, because there were so many junior high, middle school age kids who had been given the boot from their home school. No one wanted them, and so they were creating havoc in the projects. So they came to our school, and the gang members came in droves to the church, and this upset the notion of what church ought to be. Hermetically sealed, good people in, bad people out, kind of jostled that notion. And then the homies kept saying if only we had jobs, and so we went in search of marching really with the women in the parish to all the factories that surrounded the projects in search of felony-friendly employers. That wasn't so forthcoming. So we couldn't wait any longer, and so by long story, very long story short, by 1992 we started our first business, Boyle Bakery, right across the street from the church. And then a month later we started Boyle Tortillas in the Grand Central Market in downtown LA. Once we had 2 businesses, came up with the highfalutin Boyle Industries, as if there was any industry involved in this venture. And then we were off and running. And now we somehow, I don't know how it all happened, but we're the largest gang intervention program and rehab center in the country. We sort of backed our way into it. And now about 1,000 folks a month walk through our doors to seek our services, but I would say that on any given day we engage 1,000 gang members from all over the county. There are 1,100 gangs and 86,000 gang members, so I suspect there hasn't been a gang that hasn't seen one member walk through our doors. They come in search of free tattoo removal. We have a dedicated clinic with 3 laser machines and 12 doctors and 4,000 laser treatments a year. We have every imaginable curricular thing from anger management to parenting to grief and loss. We have huge mental health team, case managers, and we have all sorts of training. We have a solar panel installation training program. We have Homeboy Bakery, Homeboy Silk Screen, Homeboy Homegrown Merchandise, and Homegrown Cafe, where women with records, young ladies from rival gangs, waitresses with attitude will gladly take your order. And they cater. Some months ago, Diane Keaton showed up for lunch. She, the Oscar-winning actress, won an Academy Award for Annie Hall. She shows up for lunch. She's never been there before. She comes with a regular guy who's there once a week. And her waitress this day is a young woman named Glenda. And Glenda's a homegirl, been there, done that, been to prison, tattooed, felon, parolee. She doesn't know who Diane Keaton is. So she's taking an order, and Diane Keaton says, well, what do you recommend? And so Glenda rattles off her 3 platillos that she especially likes. And is that the heating system? And then Diane Keaton says, well, I'll have that second one right there. And so Glenda writes down her order. And then something occurs to Glenda. She looks at Diane Keaton and she says, wait a minute, I feel like I know you from somewhere. You seem so familiar to me. And then she sort of deflects it to Diane Keaton. She says, well, I suppose I have one of those faces that people think they've seen before. And then Glenda says, oh, now I know.